Between Mitch McConnell's announcement of his retirement as Senate Minority Leader and the attempts by the Supreme Court conservatives to slow things down to benefit Donald Trump, we've gotten a real window this week into the machinery of modern conservatism. But another case before the High Court may be an even more revealing example of just how far right our system has been taken in recent years, all out of proportion to public opinion. It goes back to the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history at the Las Vegas Music Festival in 2017. Just a horrific scene. I was there in the aftermath for a week. At that shooting, the gunman fired hundreds of shots into the crowd using what are called bump stocks on his rifles, which allow a semi-automatic AR-15 to simulate a machine gun.
Okay. That was faster than I expected.
Following that horrific shooting using that tool, a shooting that left 60 people dead and more than 400 injured. Remember, he was camped out in the window just shooting down on people for a very long time. Multiple polls showed that more than, wait for it, 80% of Americans wanted bump stocks banned. Numbers so overwhelming that Donald Trump took action. Donald Trump directing the ATF to classify them as machine guns. Imagine a shooting device so horrifying, the Trump administration wanted it banned. You know who doesn't? Well, the pro-gun right, which sued the ATF over its Trump-era ruling with legal aid from a group, of course, bankrolled in part by one of the Koch brothers. The case made its way to the Supreme Court, and the oral arguments this week suggested most of the conservative justices are ready to overturn the ban. Again, the ban that 80% of Americans and Donald Trump wanted in the aftermath of a truly horrific shooting. Why? Because, as Slate's Mark Joseph Stern writes, this particular ban sits at the intersection of two obsessions on the legal right: demolishing gun safety legislation and dismantling the administrative state. So once again, here's the Supreme Court considering a wildly unpopular action, right? Because it furthers far-right aims. But they don't have to worry. They're there for decades, wielding minority power as the full vision of modern conservatism. And Kate Coppins is a staff writer at The Atlantic and the author of Romney: A Reckoning. He's also our newest MSNBC political contributor, which I'm very happy about, and he joins me now. McKay, it's great to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me, Chris.
So I think this bump stock thing is it's so perfect because I think it shows why Mitch McConnell went to the lengths he went to keep that seat open when Scalia died and to rush through Amy Coney Barrett. Why Donald Trump won in 2016 as that seat was open. Why he's sort of delivered for conservatives in a way no other president had. And why fundamentally the court now is truly the cornerstone of what modern conservatism is. As someone who's been covering the conservative movement for over a decade, what do you think?
Republicans made a calculation a number of years ago that the way that they could wield power most effectively in government was through the judiciary. And I think they understood this before a lot of people on the left did, right? They have been laying the groundwork for this for really decades. And what this case is about that we're talking about here is it's really not about the Second Amendment or gun rights. It's about one of the longest running and most far-reaching goals of the conservative legal project, which is to dismantle the administrative state, right? To weaken the federal government. And I think this is one case of many where you see conservatives able to achieve their ideological aims regardless of popularity or pressure from the electorate. This is why, like you said, the conservative Supreme Court is so valuable to them, and why basically the machinery of Republican power over the last decade plus has been oriented around capturing the judiciary.
You know, this sort of administrative state and wanting to gut it, which is another huge case we're going to get from the court this term, possibly overturning decades of law about what the federal bureaucracy can do, basically saying, like, stripping it of its power. This is also key, I think, to the governing vision of a second Trump term. If you read, the Project 2025, you listen to Stephen Miller and Stephen Bannon and even Donald Trump, the idea is there's all these federal bureaucrats. We're going to get rid of them, or we're just going to hire people that like a corrupt, urban machine, like the Daily Machine,
literally,
right?
Right.
And everybody just does what we tell them to do, and that's how we're going to go and try to deport 8 to 10 million people.
That's right, and I've been writing about this for the past several months because I do think it's important for people to understand that this isn't like speculation. It's not a secret, right? The Trump administration, the future Trump administration, Donald Trump and his allies have made very clear what they want to do when they take power back, and that is to effectively replace civil servants with political loyalists. I mean, you said it's like a corrupt party machine. I don't even think they would dispute that. They might quibble with the word corrupt, but they literally want to. I talked to Paul Dans, who runs this project at the Heritage Foundation, Project 2025, and he literally said this is a top-to-bottom renovation of the federal government that we want to undertake. And I think you're right that this is all of a piece with the same goal, which is to make it so that the federal government doesn't really have any power to interpret and enforce law based on expertise or, objective analysis of what needs to be done, but rather based on what their party boss, their party leader wants.
Yeah, and when you come back around to what the checks are on that, you end up back at the court. And I've been thinking about this a lot when you compare the first term to the second term, which is the federal courts did do some, not all, but some restraining of Trump in that first term. But it wasn't the 6-3 court. It wasn't the Dobbs court. It wasn't this court. And you got to imagine, and I wonder if you think the same, that there would be a lot more leeway for a second Trump term on that score than there was in the first.
So this is something I've been wondering about a lot, frankly, because I think that we have gotten used to the idea that the judiciary will save us, right? We still have the courts. And what I would say is that I've actually done some reporting on the inner workings, the internal politics of the Supreme Court. And what I found is that these justices, for the most part, at least several of the conservative justices, they're not loyal to Trump. They're not enthralled to Donald Trump as a personality. In fact, several of them don't like him. But what they are committed to is this broader ideological project. And to the extent that the Trump administration is doing things that are outside of precedent to advance that project, I don't see any reason to believe that the courts will put a check on that.
Yeah, I think that's correct and astute. McKay Coppins, thanks so much. Great to have you on board.
Thank you.